Hi.
Hi. So here we are in the CoDream Studio. We've been getting this thing ready for a while, getting better at it, I think. Um, yeah, do you guys want to introduce yourselves and kind of introduce the context of this conversation?
Sure. Okay. I'm Yashis. It's my friend Sharon. And we're both. Okay, let me put that closer. So I'm Yashis, and this is my friend Sharon, and we're both rising sophomores at UCLA. And then Sharon can talk a little bit more about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So me and Yeshis are both in Kauaʻi at CoDream Incubator with Aza. And today we really just wanted to take the time and talk about Aza's story being the co-founder of GoGuardian and pretty much his whole journey from starting GoGuardian and just everything beyond. So
Yeah. We were standing outside by the pool yesterday, and they started asking questions about GoGuardian in the early days. And I was, tempted to turn it into a podcast. And we have turned it into a podcast, and here we are. They actually, I think, both had GoGuardian on their devices growing up. So if they end up physically attacking me throughout this, I will not be too surprised. Do it for the kids.
That's fair.
Cool. But yeah, I think that, you guys have a good sense of some questions you want to ask. I have some photos that I can share. Me and my camera's a little dark. Could you brighten me up a little bit? Thank you. Cool. Sweet. Cool. Take it away, gentlemen.
Okay. So yeah, I really want to dissect every step of the journey. And I think the best way to start that off is what was the moment as the apple falling from the tree where you first got this idea? I know GoGuardian wasn't the initial idea, so I want to hear about the laptop idea and kind of how was the moment of fruition where you're like, oh, this is something that people would actually use and I'm going to start working on it.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if we've said this, but they both go to UCLA, and the story actually starts at UCLA. So you guys know Covell Dining Hall?
yeah.
Yeah. So, there I was at Covell, and I was with my friend Justin Kim. And they used to not let you bring your backpacks in, mostly because I think they thought you would steal muffins, which I'm sure we would have. So we were forced to keep our backpacks out, and because of that, my friend Justin left his backpack out. His laptop was in his backpack. We came out after eating, and his laptop was stolen. And that was really pretty hard for him over the next couple weeks of his school thing, because laptops were important. Even back then in my day, laptops were important. And so I started thinking about what I would do. I called up my dad. I was like, hey, there's this thing called Undercover for Mac. It's a theft recovery tool. There's a family license. Will you buy it for us? And he was like, fuck off. He's kinder than that. He was like, no. And which was actually a huge blessing in a certain way, because I was like, oh, I wonder if I could build some sort of theft recovery thing. This was right around the time of HTML5 and geolocation. I don't even know what HTML we're on these days, but it's got to be more than 5. And so, you could get geolocation in the browser, and that was exciting. And so I locked myself in my dorm room, and I built this thing that could theoretically help get your laptop back if it got stolen. It was a Chrome extension. So it was kind of a dumb idea for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that it required the criminal opening up the Chrome browser and being a fan of Chrome and logging into the laptop. So there's a lot of reasons why it didn't really make that much sense. But I didn't really know how to code. I wasn't a CS student. I was a sociology student. But I kind of just banged my head against Google and eventually had something that sort of worked. Mostly just scrapping together little functions and stuff. There's a little here's the sample of how to use the HTML5's geolocation spec, and I was copy paste. oh shit, alert latitude. No way. Like we have a latitude. All right, cool. And then I like, made a little MySQL database. I probably called my dad up. He was kind of a computer science guy-ish. Or he was more of like a database administrator. Actually more of a mail server administrator starting out, but then moved into databases. Anyways, he was like, use MySQL. So I made a little MySQL server, and then we can, if we want to, show a second of this video that is me talking about this thing that I had just made when I was a sophomore.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I'm very interested in seeing this video.
Sweet. Cool. We'll see if this works. I don't know if the audio is gonna work, but we'll watch it for like a half of a second. I will share my window, and the window I'll share is Chrome, and cool. So here we are, and here's me in my dorm room. Probably this is probably the week after, or yeah, so this is really fresh, and here's me. What's up, guys? My name is Aza. I just wanted to tell you about something I just created called Laptop Lookout. I think there we go. That's probably about enough to get a little bit of context around like how old I was and what was going on. But yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah.
So you said you took like how long to build this?
And well, the kind of so the first there's so much I want to say. I was in, so they're in an entrepreneurial fraternity right now, and it's called Sigma Eta Pi, and I was in that entrepreneurial fraternity at that time, and it was kind of cool vaguely to like have the support of that while I was thinking through this. And the first iteration of it, I think I honestly coded in about 48 hours. It was like very MVP, but it was about 48 hours.
So it's pretty quick turnaround, yeah.
So after you coded this and made it into like a full-blown project, I see that you posted the video. So what was like the next steps after that? Did you try marketing it or like getting people to use it?
Yeah. I posted it on the Chrome Web Store. I don't really think I did any marketing. I like made a website for it that was like far more legit than it actually, or the website looked more legit than the software was in a certain way. Yeah, I had like no idea about security. I had no idea about pretty much anything. There's actually kind of a funny story there where at a certain point, because it got like 10,000 users over the next like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months. And that was super cool because it was like one of the first things I've ever made that like got users. And that is such a good feeling. You're like, oh my God, I've done something that's useful. Like, and at one point I was like, what are all these numbers in my database? Because I of course I had no idea what I was doing. So the database was all like plain text. And there's all these 16-digit numbers. You guys might have like idea of what they were, and there was like a non-trivial number of them. There's like maybe, I don't know, 50 or something. And I realized, and I did a regex expression, like got them all. They were all credit cards. I just had like tons of people's credit card numbers stored in plain text on my database, and I was like, oh God, this is maybe bad. Yeah. I think I erased them. I never used them. I definitely never used them. That I could tell you.
I'll get you in some sticky places.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's great to see like one of the first things you built, you had so many users. So did that kind of motivate you to keep going with this idea? Or I know eventually you did have to transition to or pivot towards the idea towards like GoGuardian. I think one thing that many founders and entrepreneurs struggle with is knowing when to pivot or knowing when to stop working on something and start working on something else. So what was that experience like for you at this point?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So it really did feel like for me it was one thing that I just kept going towards and sometimes changed direction on, but it really wasn't like a new project, honestly. It was like laptop lookout, and then I was like, okay, well, I'll just tell the story of what happened because okay, all right. So I get a call from a school district. It's a guy named Jeff. I could actually find the email. That would be so interesting. But it's a guy named Jeff who legitimately sent me an email, and he was like, "Hey, laptop lookout guy, we just ordered. I think it was like 12,000 Chromebooks. We're wondering if we can use your thing to protect them from theft." And I like got on a call with him, and I was standing somewhere on the UCLA campus. I had just kind of like vaguely ditched my class or something to do this call, or just gotten out of class probably. And he had no idea like how unlegitimate I was as like a company or developer. But he was like, he just needed something that would work for his Chromebooks. And I was like, yes, I can make something that will protect your Chromebooks from theft. What is a Chromebook, sir? And I like started working on that. And it was kind of under the understanding that if I could build the software, like he was going to be able to deploy it to a specific stolen device. But neither of us really understood how that worked that well, and that became obvious because I really spent like 2 or 3 months building kind of an enterprise version of GoGuardian or Laptop Lookout or whatever, and it was all pretty much wasted time. It was cool. I got way better at programming through that, but because he couldn't actually get it. Basically, extensions are pushed to users through Chrome policy, not to devices. And they don't let you push extensions based on device ID or things like that. And so that was this huge thing that I was just like, oh, I can't actually make this work. I know. And I actually, in the process of that, I made a website for like a new version of Laptop Lookout. It was like Chromebook thieves, you've met your match. And it had all these cool graphics. And there's a contact form where you could be like, how many Chromebooks do you have? And like, yeah. And so I built the thing, and then we tried to deploy it, and it just didn't work. Because you could deploy it to all the devices, but then all the devices are like spitting back geolocation. You don't know which one it is. It's not useful. And I was like, gosh darn it. And yeah, I could have, and honestly, I did kind of give up for a while. And I started working on this other business. But I would get these reach outs, which were always like kind of awkward because people would submit the form. They'd be like, I have 30,000 Chromebooks. Like, I'm super interested in your solution. Like, I can't wait to talk to you. And I'm like, oh God, it doesn't work. Like, I should probably bring down that website. This is so awkward. But I just kind of kept it up. And then a few years down the line, or like a year down the line or whatever, that list started to become really valuable because there's like over 70 or school districts representing 70,000 devices had reached out. And so that was kind of the beginning of my customer list. And then through one of those conversations, they were like, hey, this is cool and everything, but like really what I need is a way to tell what's actually happening on students' devices. Like, this is the first time I'm in a classroom and I'm just looking at the back of 30 Chromebooks and I have no idea what people are doing. And I just wish I had a way to do that. And that was, to me, that was this like moment where I was like, oh, that would be like a user-based policy, not a device-based policy. Like I could actually probably do that. And I was like, okay, give me like 4 days. And I just like, yeah, dropped everything and started kind of coding specifically for that. I didn't even really know what it was at that time, honestly. They were just like, I was like, so you want like a pie? Like, and I started talking to these other people that were all district IT administrators because they're the ones like securing the devices and buying the devices. And they were like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And I was like, how do you want to see it? And they're like, I don't know, you want to do like a pie chart or something? And I'm like, okay, cool. And so I'm like Googling like how to make a pie chart of whatever. And then I would build that thing and I would show it to them and I was like, is this what you want? And they'd be like, yeah, that's cool. Like, can you also like show it like this or something? I'd be like, okay, maybe. And then I would stay up all night and try to code the thing. And this time I was staying on my friend AJ's couch. Shout out to AJ if you're watching. Huge thanks. Sorry I didn't give you more equity. I actually did end up giving him equity because he ended up interning at GoGuardian later, and he actually paid for his law school using GoGuardian equity, which is cool. But if I had paid for rent on his couch in equity at that time, he would have probably gotten a lot more money. Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of want to backtrack to the point where the laptop lookout kind of failed and you took a little break before like building directly with the IT administrators of the school. So how did that failure feel like? And then when you were trying to get back into it, what was like your motivations and your feelings at that time?
All right. So there's no way to talk about this without talking about what my other business was, because before this, they were asking like, okay, are there any things we can't talk about? And if there was one thing that we couldn't talk about, it probably would be this, but we can talk about it. It's okay. I had another business. I'm not incredibly proud of it. It was called Frat Boards. We sold fraternity. Stop Googling it, everybody. We sold fraternity paddle skateboards. And it was, yeah, there's a whole little story there. But basically, and it was going well. And we sold like $100,000 worth of the stuff, the skateboards and stuff. So basically, when I had graduated from college, I had this moment of like, okay, what am I going to do? And I actually talked to my friend AJ and I was like, AJ, do you think I should do frat boards? Do you think I should do laptop lookout? And he was like, bro, if laptop lookout has any legs, like you should probably do that, like not frat boards. And he was right. And at first I was like trying to sell frat boards. And then I was like, yeah, this is kind of silly. I should just probably double down on the laptop lookout thing. So, that is the business that I created when the other thing didn't work, kind of, and I just poured my energy into there. I don't think I interact with failure. I think part of what makes me an entrepreneur is that I don't feel like I interact with failure the way that most people interact with failure. Like I just treat like roadblocks as things to be climbed over, not like reasons to turn around. And that there's a lot of points in my story, my path of GoGuardian or of life, in which more reasonable people would have been like, okay, yeah, I should turn around here. Like, this is not going to work. And lots of conversations that I'd have with people, and they'd be like, oh, this is such, like, laptop lookout is such a dumb idea. Like, this has no legs at all. Even actually early on, Advite, who ended up being my co-founder, I like tried to get him to join GoGuardian because he was a year ahead of me. And I was like, hey, like, and there wasn't really, there wasn't that much happening with it. He's like, yeah, bro, I'm going to like get a job at Google, like not like what, work on your Chrome extension that has like no revenue or anything. I was like, oh, darn. So yeah, it was just a fuck ton of persistence. Yeah.
I think it's really important for any founder to have. And I also think something that's important for any founder to have is kind of intuition on the kind of people they want to work with or what kind of people they want to bring onto their company. Yeah. So I want to talk about what your experience was like navigating through finding a co-founder or getting people to join Laptop Lookout.
Oh, God. It's honestly one of my least favorite parts of the process. is like trying to get people to believe in your thing. I hate that. And yeah, there's a lot of people actually reconnected because, of course, in retrospect, when you're like, because there's a lot of people where I was like, oh man, you should be my CTO, you should be my, and now in retrospect, where it like turned into this really successful thing, I'm like, oh, those dumbasses, they could have made all this money, like they, and I'm sure they're happy and they did whatever they did and they made the right decisions for them, but yeah, it was pretty painful to like the like are you my mother process of like, hey, do you want to work on this thing with me, like I think yeah, that was really hard, and I had a few that like worked all right for a while. I had one that worked all right for a while, but then he wanted to go get a job at Amazon, and then I had this other guy named Miles. I probably shouldn't be saying people's names, but he like that one exploded into a fiery mess. And yeah, we can tell that story if you want. But yeah, he like threatened to sue the company and all this stuff after like maybe like 3 weeks of working together, and I was like, okay, this is not like the happy co-founder vibes that I'm looking for. Yeah, happy to dive in anywhere that you find interesting. Or yeah, did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. Yeah. But like, I want to know more about like, is there specific values you're looking for within your co-founders, or just like you saw someone like, oh, I think this person's cracked and would make my company like actually succeed?
It was mostly that. I was just mostly at that time looking for people who were like super smart. I think honestly, I probably should have been a little more like values oriented rather than just like, oh, who do I think is gonna like be the smartest person that could like blow this up as much as possible. Yeah. I think you probably are doing a better job selecting for co-founders than I did. I had a lot of learnings pretty quickly. I think what I always used to say at that time was like date before you marry. And that's what I always tried to do, is like find ways to kind of work together before like being like, all right, cool, you get whatever percentage of the company and you're my co-founder now.
You said that a lot of people that you worked with would like work for a few weeks and then decide they want to go get a job at like a corporate company. And there's always this like whole thing like between corporate and entrepreneurship. What was your like perspective on that? Where were you in that scale? Did you know you always just wanted to start something yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am balding and bald largely. And that was pretty terrifying during college because I was going bald, and I would always wear this red hat, and it was like kind of hiding the fact that I was going bald because I like somehow thought that all my friends would just like decide not to be my friend once they realized I was going bald. It was actually pretty wild. I like wouldn't go into the pools because I would have to take off my hat. I wouldn't like the. It's a yes. It was wild. And one of the things I was particularly afraid of is I realized like if I joined someone else's company, or my idea was at least that they were going to have a dress code, and I like wouldn't be able to wear my hat. And so I was like, that was definitely part of the reasoning of like, okay, I think I need to start my own thing so I can create my own dress code. Unfortunately, eventually, just to bring that story full circle, the GoGuardian started working, and then we had a meeting with LA Unified School District, and there's this guy named Ty Cobb that like knew LA Unified School District, and he was like, all right, you have to be at this meeting, and you have to wear this whatever, you got to wear a suit or whatever. And I'm like, oh god. I was like, Ty, like, can I wear my hat? And he's like, nope. And I was like, oh, frick. And so I like, actually the first thing I did, well, we're getting turned around in time, but I went to like my really good friend and roommate, Nick, who I was living with and doing GoGuardian with. And I was like, Nick, I like sat him down. I was like, Nick, there's something I need to tell you. I've been going bald. And he was like, what? no way. And I was like, can I show you? And I like took off my hat. It was like this big reveal, and I like pulled back my hair and showed him my receding hairline, and then shaved my head on that day. And anyways, we got really really off track with that story. But it was really, really freeing eventually. If anyone out there is balding and terrified, your friends will still love you, even if you're bald. Feel free to rein us back in. Sorry about that, guys. And talk super close to your mic if you're trying to get that nice podcast sound.
Got it. So yeah, I think wanting to wear hats is a great reason to start a company. I wanted to, as we transition to your life, like after college, I just want to wrap up, like, what was your relationship like with college? Because I think nowadays a lot of people who consider themselves like entrepreneurial want to go to college to drop out, or like, did you kind of like classes or whatever, and you just worked on your own thing the whole time? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, there was actually a distinct moment-ish, like in freshman year. I forget how I learned, but basically somehow I learned that grades don't matter at all unless you're like going into academia. And I was like, oh my God, because up to that point grades mattered so much to me, and it was this huge moment of like, whoa, it was a reframing. Yeah. And then from there, I basically just like did what I needed to do to pass. And I kind of chose my major based on what would be an easy major, so I could do stuff that I actually wanted to do, like start businesses on the side. No shade to any sociology majors out there. I was a sociology major. And yeah, truthfully, the value of college for me was 100% not the knowledge transferred in classes. It was the friends, the experiences. And I'm really curious to see what happens to college in the coming years. It's pretty wild to me that it's just so poorly preparing people for, it's almost like doing the opposite, because it's also giving you debt oftentimes.
Yeah.
So it's like not only not preparing you, but it's also just like having you start out in the negative. And it's like, oh God, this is what we're doing to our kids. Like, oof.
How did you spend your summers like when you were in college?
Oh, that's a funny question. So through this, actually, through like doing some of the laptop lookout stuff, I started kind of thinking of myself as like a programmery person. And there was a career fair, and I went to it, and Yahoo was there, and I like met the hiring manager named Berg, and Dan, I think. And I got an internship as a software engineer at Yahoo, which I thought was kind of hilarious. But they liked my projects. And then to bring that full circle, actually, I ended up way later hiring Berg out of Yahoo into GoGuardian. Yeah.
So I guess to transition to the next step of GoGuardian, how did GoGuardian essentially change once, like, when did it become like a startup? Like when did you start literally like getting people to like hire people and get them to work on this company with you? Like, what point was that, like after college?
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out if I should just like tell the story as I normally tell it, or if I should skip to that. I guess I can just kind of skip to that. But basically, there's this guy named Nick, and Nick was my roommate and amazing friend. Shout out Nick if you're watching. Still at GoGuardian, I think, which is wild. And he didn't have a job. I didn't have a job. Our moms were always like calling both of us, being like, "Yo, guys, like, hope you're having fun in San Diego, but also like, time to get a job." And But that had kind of started happening less in the context of like me really working very seriously on laptop lookup stuff. I was kind of like, hey, Nick, do you want to learn to code and help me with this? Like maybe your mom will like get off your case about getting a job a little bit. And he was like, sure. So I gave him a book on PHP. He read it over the weekend. He was absurdly smart. He like after that weekend, keep in mind I'd been like vaguely programming for like 2 or 3 years at this point. He was like a better programmer than I was after like a weekend. I was like, damn it. But it was awesome because then we were working together. Actually, I could show a photo of Nick if people want to see.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So sharing. I'll just try to share my screen. Hopefully this isn't a terrible idea. Don't judge my number of tabs, everybody. So here's us down in San. Oh wait, can anyone see anything? Whoa. Okay, here's us down in San Diego. Here is, oh God. Yeah, here's us in college, being our partying selves. And then here's us in San Diego. This is where we lived with Lainey and Justin and their dog Pipkin. And we would code, and we were the only people doing it. And it was a lot of fun. I actually remember this one moment where stop screen sharing. I remember this one moment when I kind of asked him, I think, or maybe he asked me. One of us asked the other person, like, hey, like, do you think this is actually, because at that point we hadn't made any money. And like, no, we had no investors or anything. We're like, hey, do you think this is gonna actually work? Like, is this gonna become a business, you think? And yeah, I think I asked him, and he was like, probably. Like, I could see it happening. And I was like, whoa, that'd be so cool. Yeah. But we kind of didn't really know. We weren't making any money. I had like $700 in my bank account. And I was like, yeah, you can actually see on that photo that I didn't. All right, I'll share the other photo. But there's this this surfboard where I gotta go to this thing. Cool. There's a surfboard here where this was like the whiteboard I was using, and you can actually see on there it says register as S Corp. And I was putting that off as long as possible because I forget how much it was. It was like $300 or something. And then I think I actually used my Nana's money that she gave me for Hanukkah. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do the S Corp thing. And I think I might have waited also until we had our first check to decide to pull the trigger. Yeah, but then there was this wild moment when because I was still kind of looking for co-founders, and I was like, okay, who do I need? And I was like, okay, I don't really know how to code that well, and I don't really know anything about business, really. So, like, I need, like, someone to help me with business and someone to help me with the technology, which is kind of funny because that's, like, all the company really is in a certain way. It's like, it's a technology business, and I didn't really know either of those things. So I was like, okay, I need to find those two people. And so, yeah, there was this guy named Todd that I had a conversation with. I got connected to him, and he was, he's told me that he wanted to come on, and give us $100,000 as an investment. And I had this moment where I was like just trying to stop myself from smiling because I was like, this guy has no idea. Like, I have $700 in my bank account. I'm about to have $100,000. Like, this is going to be insane. Like, what? This guy is an idiot for giving this to me. Like, no way. Yeah.
So you got this $100,000 when you really weren't looking for funding, and you're just looking for like a co-founder.
Yeah.
Interesting. what are your thoughts on like fundraising and trying to like raise like a pre-seed round or something when you try to start a startup? I feel like at least like how I view things and like currently like a lot of people just try to raise money just as like a status thing. Even if like a product
Yeah.
or a startup doesn't need money to begin, people just want to raise money to say they raise money, even if there's not really a clear goal for it. So what are your thoughts on that in perspective?
I totally agree. I really want there to be more businesses, and that kind of gets into like what I'm trying to do with CoDream, but I want there to be more businesses where people are controlling their own destiny. And the easiest way to do that is to, because either you are making money because you are a business that is working, or you have money because you've taken in money. Um, and I think there's definitely a strong argument to just, and because honestly, like I've been starting businesses my whole life. My first business made like $10. My next business made like $100, and then I made another business that made like $1,000, then $100,000, and then whatever, $100 million or something, or more than that. That's yeah. And I totally forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, it's important to just like do things that actually have value, I guess, and try, if you can avoid taking outside capital, I definitely would avoid it as long as you can. And I definitely think that mostly what VCs are capitalizing on is your lack of confidence in yourself. And they end up getting a large chunk of your business in exchange for giving you validation, basically. And of course, in the form of money. And sometimes that money may be important too. And I wouldn't say that there's like no cases in which raising money could make sense for a business. But just personally, what I would like to see more of is just businesses that work and make the world a better place in some way, where they're really like founder created and can be nourishing to the world and to the founder over time.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying when you want to make sure everything you do within your business like really has a purpose. And I can probably tell that you led your team with a certain set of values or morals behind it. So I want to kind of ask what the culture at GoGuardian was like when you were leading it.
Yeah. I knew that the only reason I was sort of leading a company, or I was definitely leading the company, but um, was because I had listened to users really well. And so I really tried to like drill that point again and again and again, because people, including myself, would start to like think we're getting clever, and like that we didn't really need to listen, that we're kind of like smarter than the users, and we're like, oh, I know what we should do. And I think it, yeah, one of the like values, or really the kind of the only value that I actually cared about at the company, was what we called seek truth without ego. I'm sure I'm sure I had a massive ego at certain times too. I don't want to like pretend that that wasn't a thing, but I think it's kind of what I was trying to get across with that was like, leave your self concepts aside, and yeah, get to the bottom of what the user needs are.
I know a lot of people tend to use the apps that they make or like be their own users to kind of see the user experience. Like literally when I was coming to Kauaʻi, the Uber I took to the airport, the Uber driver said he worked for Uber corporate. He was a PM at Uber and he was just like testing out the driver features, which I thought was kind of interesting. But what are your thoughts on like being your own user and stuff like that?
Honestly, I just don't have a whole lot of experience with that. Um, I could see maybe that it could work. But yeah, just a lot of the things I've done have really been kind of for other people, or for like it would kind of, for the GoGuardian thing, it would have been hard for me to be my own user. Um, and of course we like definitely tried to use the software and stuff. And we would like buy a bunch of Chromebooks and then write a Chrome extension so that they like randomly browse the internet, so we could kind of be our own users. But yeah, it was, and but I think the fact that you're not the user is actually kind of really helpful, because it can be this like automatic humbling thing, because you just don't know. Like, it was kind of so useful that I just didn't know the world of the IT administrator, so I could just like really listen and absorb, rather than coming in with a bunch of like preconceived notions.
So, like, along the same line, did you have anyone that either like worked at a school or like part of the IT team at like a district that you were working with directly with your company, or was it mainly just based on like talking to customers, getting problems from there? Kind of concerned with like founder market fit and stuff like that.
Like, did I hire any IT administrators in house?
Yeah.
Mm-mm. I didn't really for a while. I think eventually they kind of did. Um, yeah, but no.
So yeah, a lot of what you guys had to ideate on is based off of, well, what the user needs and what these schools are telling you. But how much did you guys ever have conflicts within what investors wanted you to do and what you guys wanted to do?
Actually, not really too much, because our investors, should we back up and tell the context of how we ended up with investors, or just kind of like skip into the amorphous future? I'm kind of open to either.
I think
But
it'd be interesting to hear the full story. Yeah.
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 Okay. So at a certain point, we started going down our own fundraising process. And I'm honestly not exactly sure what precipitated that, or like why we were doing that. All I really know is that we were like, okay, we're going to fundraise. And I'm sure part of it was that like everyone else with a startup was like, yes, you fundraise. That is one of the things you do. And we're like, okay. So we went out and we were like, okay, we want to raise 3 to 5 million or something. Or no, I think we're saying 2 to 3 million. I don't even know. And I did all these pitch meetings. Once again, I think, yeah, that's just part of the process that I really did not like, because you're trying to get people to believe in the thing. And it was just, yeah, it was just kind of painful. Just tons of rejection. I basically got rejected by 25 VCs in a row. And it was mostly because they didn't think that the market was going to be big enough. Because it was in education and no one had ever seen $1 billion. Or there's just like, yeah, they want to see $1 billion opportunity, and they didn't think that they saw that. And then eventually I actually got kind of like a cold reach out from this VC, and named Anthos, and they reached out and said that they wanted to do a meeting. It turned out that the way they found me was, an associate at the VC asked her boyfriend from UCLA if he knew any like promising entrepreneurs while he was in college, and he was like, "Oh, you should check into what this guy Aza is doing. Maybe he's doing something." And so that's actually, that's actually what ended up happening. And then, yeah, they ended up giving us $5 million for 30% of our company. And we didn't really spend much of it. And yeah. So obviously if you raise the money and then don't really spend it and give up, and we ended up giving up a lot of our company through that relationship. Yeah.
So when you were first like raising money and you said you had like 25 straight rejections in a row, like that's crazy. I mean, even for an entrepreneur with like insane perseverance, just getting rejected back to back seems hard. How or like how would you deal with that? I mean, not just for like VC meetings, but like just in generally like starting a startup, all the roadblocks like how did you still have the perseverance to continue even after a lot of people didn't believe in the company?
I mean, well, really, the thing is that they were saying is like, hey, we don't think this is $1 billion thing. When I was starting GoGuardian, Chromebooks were just becoming a thing. GoGuardian success really rode on the coattails of the success of Chromebooks. And Chromebooks were just in their nascent stages. To such an extent that I actually, do you guys know what the TAM is, total addressable market?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I did a TAM analysis for GoGuardian in its earliest stage, and I think I found that if I captured 100% of the market, I could make $2 million.
That's a crazy calculation. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, I was like, that's awesome. Like, to anyone else, if your total adjustable market is 2 million, they're like, okay, we need to look at a different opportunity. For me, I was like, all right, my hat can stay on. I can like maybe have a job. Like, this is cool. So I didn't, there's a certain part of me that like, if a VC was like, hey, this isn't like game changing enough of an idea for us to invest in, I wasn't like really that hurt in a certain way. I didn't really care that much. But yeah, it was pretty grueling. Honestly, eventually I like kind of like my co-founder Todd, I remember there's one where we had gone to New York to meet with someone. I forget who it was, and I think I had like gotten with a girl the night before or stayed up all night or something, and then I was just like, Todd, can you take this meeting without me? And then he did it. And then I guess the venture partner was like super offended that the CEO didn't come and said like that never happens. Like, I can't believe that was so rude. And I was like, whatever, bro. You're just gonna say no anyways. Like, who gives a yeah. I don't know. I definitely have a little bit of a stick on my shoulder. I don't know what the phrase is, but yeah, about the whole venture thing. That was a hard chapter. For sure.
Yeah. For sure, I think there's a lot of like, well, like facing rejection is gonna put you through a lot. Like, what other things did you have to deal with being a CEO of your company that you didn't originally think that you'd have to deal with like down the line? Like any internal problems, like within yourself or within the company.
Oh boy, here we go. This is the can of worms getting cracked. I mean, I think so. At a certain point, Advait and I had this conversation about like how you needed to be as a leader, because that was the thing. Neither of us had like really done it before. And he kind of had this theory that because he had worked at Google, and so he had been at these all hands with Larry and Sergey, and they were like gods to him. And he was like, to be a good CEO, we need to basically feel like gods to our employees. And that was the start of this kind of internal bifurcation of me realizing I had this internal experience of not feeling like an omniscient God, or not knowing exactly where I was going, or not knowing, having all these answers, and needing to kind of put on this persona that was vastly different from that. And that, I feel like, was the core of what ended up kind of crushing me through this experience. And yeah, so that's kind of the core of it, I feel like. A lot of the stuff, I mean, there's lots of really hard stuff. Like, the hardest part for me was probably firing people. Like, it's so nice to bring people into a thing, and you like build this thing and it feels like family and everyone's just like psyched and happy. I kind of want to show another photo that just like of some of those moments that just felt so so good. All right, wait, All right, so here we are looking at the surfboard, and then here I'll show. Yeah, these moments come to mind of just like building this kind of, here you guys can't really see it, this family vibe where we're just like all having so much fun together. And it was amazing. And then to have to get to a place where you realize you need to like oust someone from this family was so devastating. And then just also internally, just to like be up late at night, be like, oh, how am I gonna do this? Like, what do I need to say? When am I gonna do this? And then you have to like continue seeing them at work too before it's happening. You're like, fuck, like, okay, and you know, and you're like constantly being like, okay, maybe they're getting better, or like maybe this is, yeah. And some of that was what really kind of ate at me internally.
Yeah. I'd love to hear like an early story of like an employee that you had to fire. Like what, like at an early company, like what would be like a valid reason to fire someone if they've brought value to the company or if they've done something useful?
So okay, one that comes to mind is this guy named Daniel, and Daniel was working in support, and when Daniel got hired, he was like, hey bro, I have like a family on the way, I think, or a kid on the way, like all that I ask is like either don't fire me or like give me lots of warning. And fast forward like I don't know how long, maybe it's 8 months or something, but the whole support team kind of went on strike vaguely, and like I forget why. I'm sure they had a good reason, honestly. They were like mad at something and how something was happening, and they're like, screw this, we're gonna stop working. And I went to Todd. I was like, Todd, like all the support people just like went on strike, they're like not working, like what do we do? And Todd was like you have to fire them, like we can just have people that aren't working, like if this is a job, like if you don't want to work, you can't work here, kind of deal. And one of those people was Daniel, and it was so, yeah, it was just that kind of stuff, like yeah, it was hard. And then people too, because especially like people in leadership positions that you like grow close with, and then at a certain point, because the thing is, this thing is growing so much, and growing like pretty unnaturally fast in a lot of ways. Like we did like 1 million of revenue in the first year, and then like I think 5 or 6 the next year, and then 12 million the next year. It was just like this really fast acceleration, and it wasn't natural. And there's kind of this thing of just like how fast can someone scale with an organization, like with the needs of an organization. Like if you have a VP of sales, when you have 10 people, that's going to be a different person. Like you probably don't need a VP of sales when you have 10 people, but when you have 30 people, that looks maybe pretty different than when you have 100 people or 300 people or whatever. And I think the other thing is we kept hearing that we needed to find people with experience too, and like people that had done it before, and we would find these people, and then it just wouldn't, like they wouldn't internally jive with the team in some way, and there would be some like drama thing that would happen. Like one of our VPs of sales, he was like a pretty, like his team loved him, and he was a great leader for his team, but he actually created this like weird division between product and sales, where his, like it was like his sales team was against the rest of the company, and it created this like internal thing where it's like we can't do this, like we have to be like a unified company, we can't be like two companies here. And I, you know, we would try meeting after meeting to like get that across and be like, look, you can't just be fighting for your team here. Like this has to be about like the whole company. We have to be like well integrated with the product organization. And then eventually you're like, fuck, I think I have to find someone new to lead the sales team that's not going to just like create this internal war. Yeah.
Interesting. What are your thoughts about hiring like friends or like people that you already know? And then like obviously I've heard of like a lot of stories of like leaders having to fire like their own friends or like people that they're really close with. So have you ever encountered anything like that, or did you ever end up hiring your friends for the company?
Yeah. I hired a lot. Well, okay. I hired, if like my friends were in a Venn diagram, some of them, I hired my friends that I thought were going to be like really overtly great for the company. I wasn't just hiring people because they were my friends. Yeah. But if there was someone that was like, okay, this person is both my friend and brilliant and gonna be whatever, someone like Nick or something. And honestly, so there was definitely some of those people that came in. Weston was another one. All right, we'll show a picture of Weston to make this mood a little happier. Weston is a tremendous soul. Here he is. This is Weston and Tyler Shaddix. Tyler Shaddix was another GoGuardian superstar. Oh wait, I don't know if people can see this. Yeah, I guess I can. Weston and Tyler, and then over here is Weston again. He was our first salesperson. And I never really had to fire people that I had known before GoGuardian. And the sad thing about Weston is actually that eventually the company got sold to a private equity firm, and they ended up just firing Weston, even though he was like the third employee and like a super prolific salesperson, but they just like didn't give a fuck.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things that like are not in your control when you're like building a company like this. Is there like a moment where you felt like everything was out of control and you felt despair, or were you mostly like, I know where this is going, like I feel like I know everything and I kind of have a good control over the situation here?
Yeah. I think for the first like 30 employees, I didn't know what was happening. It was a wild journey of just like me feeling like I was on a roller coaster with this whole journey. But it was so much fun, and we were just like, it was this team, and we really were just like on it. Felt, kind of like a boat where you're just like, wow, we don't really know exactly what's happening, but like we're gonna get through this together. And we were playing soccer all the time, and it was just like a family, community, company thing, and it was a blast. That was so much fun. And then, at a certain point, I don't know, when it started to get to like 50, 60, 70, 80 employees, then I started to just kind of have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of feelings that I wasn't the best person for the job, and I was kind of letting down my company in different ways. And I would be at these all hands meetings, and people would ask questions about the future. That was one of the main things, actually, I think, is this concept of vision. People always talk about it, of like, what is your vision for what this company is going to be in 5 years? And like, I had absolutely no idea. And actually, I was kind of sort of like morally against the question, because I was like, that me saying I know where this company is going to be in 5 years is kind of saying that we're going to stop listening to users and just like build what we think this needs to be. But I didn't really have like the self-belief to actually say that. So I kind of just thought that there was something wrong with me. I would like do these visioning exercises. We like had an executive coach and we'd sit down and do these visioning exercises. And she'd be like, all right, what do you see? What do you feel? And I'd be like, I don't really see any, I don't know, like a Chrome extension. I don't know. And that was, yeah, that was really hard and ended up being and it did get like more and more stressful. And I started to have more and more doubts. And there was a time, truthfully, when I couldn't sleep really. I like was having trouble falling asleep. And I actually called up my friend Cole. Shout out Cole. And he worked at the company and was like, Cole, I'm not really sleeping. Like, can I like come sleep on your floor? He's just kind of like a teddy bear kind of guy. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And so I'd like go over and sleep on his floor and I would sleep way better. But there's definitely a level of like confusion and isolation. And I don't know how much of it was self-imposed, honestly. Or how much of it, yeah. But it definitely got hard.
Do you think this self-doubt grew, like what were the factors that were contributing to it? Was it the like rate the company grew, or the fact that you didn't have that vision for like 5 years down the line of where you wanted to take the company? Or what do you think were like the main contributing factors to this growing confusion?
I don't know. I think probably a lot of it was just kind of, I think I kind of have this lone wolfy like mentality, or this lack of trust in a certain way. And so I think a lot of it was probably just how I saw reality and how I saw myself needing to shoulder this burden of needing to figure everything out. And I wasn't really able to prevent or like see things in a new way, or prevent that weight from just growing and growing and crushing me. And of course, you know, then you do things like whatever, hired an executive coach or started to do 360 reviews where you're getting all this feedback. I still have journals actually. Actually, one of them's down in HQ at CoDream. Journals where I would like get scores from people of like how good at this, or like what all their negative feedback was. And a lot of it would be like, you need to have better communication. And I was like, what does that even, like, what does that mean? Like, it's hard. Yeah, it was confusing for me. And I think something we touched on a little bit before this is like, I was emotionally pretty unwilling to open some of the skeletons open the closet for fear of the skeletons, I suppose. And I was just scared of going there. I was aware that there's things I was avoiding, but I just didn't want to really look at it. And I think that kind of prevented me from doing the emotional growth that I would have needed to in order to continue to like scale with the business. Yeah, kind of because I thought I needed to be this like God figure. And I'm like, okay, gods don't open up about this confusion, you know? Yeah, my takeaway from that, honestly, for anyone who is running a business or whatever, you don't need to be a god. In fact, I think it is better if you are a human, and it provides more space for your employees or for everyone to be a human. Yeah.
So, like, if you could go back to that point where you felt like you were really just shutting the door, not opening up, would you have acted differently or gone back or try to change that to fix it or face it head on?
I mean, no, I'm not gonna like I love my life. I'm not gonna go back and like fuck with the timeline. But if I were to do something like that again, I would definitely continue to prioritize like emotional health and well-being. And yeah, I hope to get better at like truly sharing a burden too. I think I can still do things where I'm just like somehow kind of isolating myself and kind of the only one really trying to do something. I was feeling it today, even with the podcast a little bit. I was like, fuck, I'm just like so stressed out and just trying to do it. And like, and I think that's probably one of my like core fears and questions as a human is like, to what extent am I alone in this life? To what extent am I alone in my experience? And I'm probably like terrified of that. And that's probably part of the reason I create these different companies and projects and organizations to get to explore that.
So with the journal you were talking about, you said that you were asking other people's like opinions on like your skills and like kind of scoring them, right? So like I kind of just want to get like the perspective of why you did something like that, where you asked other people for your like for how they thought about your problems. Was it like you couldn't identify your own problems, or you wanted to see how other people viewed it, or what was like the perspective behind that?
I think it was just because I thought like good leaders and good companies did 360 reviews because it would be like a fearless, honest thing to do. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Yeah, it was pretty crushing because it's all anonymous too. I think there's probably a better way to go about it. I think the other thing too is my relationship with my co-founder, Advite, like was I kind of thought it was good, sort of, but I think at a certain point it started faltering, and um, yeah, and I think that because when your co-founder's in your corner, that can be so helpful, and when your co-founder's not in your corner, that especially when you've been relying on that as like a source of support and self-belief, that can be pretty devastating for sure.
How was that experience like with like that faltering relationship with your co-founder? Like how did that kind of progress and how did that start? Like what do you think caused that?
I think I'm just going to present it in all of its complexity, which is that I'm honestly pretty confused about it still. And there's part of me that wonders how if he was being honest, because I know certain things that he said, but I also know that like because there was a time when he was like, I want to be the CEO of GoGuardian. And getting me to believe that I was a bad CEO or getting me to like falter is kind of a pretty effective path towards him stepping into the role of GoGuardian. So it's hard for me to accept everything that he said at face value in a certain way. Yeah. But what he said, I can share what he said too, because yeah. What he said is that, and I think in a certain way he was being really honest too. That I kept on knocking down emotional sandcastles that he would build. And so like one example of this is we were redoing, so we had an admin dashboard, right? It's called the admin product. Eventually we built a teacher dashboard, and something else too. But we built this admin dashboard and we needed to redo it. So we built this thing called admin V2. And there's these engineers working on admin V2 for a while. And they brought it in on one day to, our boardroom, and they showed it to me like a demo. And I thought it was terrible, honestly. And I thought that it was pretty clear that they weren't like, it's, I don't know, really talking to customers and all the stuff that I felt like was really important. And it said something like that. And I think it was really like, it was hard for people in the room who had just spent 2 or 3 months of their life building this thing. And then they're like, wait, you know. And so I think in Advite's world, that was because he then would have to listen to all these people be like, they'd be like, he'd be like, hey, how are you doing? And they'd be like, oh, I'm feeling kind of shitty. And they'd be like, why are you feeling shitty? I don't know, because Aza was kind of an asshole and like said that, you know. And so, and I think because he was also hiring his friends too. And so I think from his perspective, it was like I was kind of hurting these people that he cared about. And yeah, and he had his own desires around being the CEO. Yeah.
Do you guys think that like you and Advait had like the same vision of where the company was going to go? Or, like just like a general idea of like leading the company. Did you guys have differing thoughts?
I think we definitely complemented each other a lot in term like I kind of always felt like he was the mom of the company and I was the dad sort of. And he we always talked about him as an empath sort of, and he was like, and yeah. But in general we would, I think, usually see fairly eye to eye. I mean, honestly, I was really good at kind of like execution and being like, okay, this is how we can do what we need to do to pull this off. And he more liked to delve into the realms of like, okay, what's possible? What does this mean for society? What does this mean in 10 years or whatever? And yeah, that for me was like a fun compliment. Yeah. Do you,
Yeah.
do you want, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, just if you guys want to like hear the story of how it all like kind of fell apart and those crazy moments, I'm open to sharing.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit. Yeah, just trying to find a good way to ask you.
Yeah. So it was a Friday afternoon. Actually was. And Advent came in, I don't know, it was like 11 a.m. or something. And he said, Aza, I want to talk about a plan for me to leave the company. And that was wild for me. I did not see that coming at all. So I canceled all my meetings and we went to a park across the street. And we sat there and yeah, he was like, hey, like, I don't know if you care about me. Like, that was kind of the crux of what he was saying. I started crying. It was basically like, I don't know. I basically was like, I don't even know if I care about myself. Like, I don't know what this is. And yeah, that was the first moment. Then we actually had a leadership team offsite that was planned for like the next week. And I was kind of dreading it because the leadership, it's like a big thing where you're trying to talk about the future of the company. And I didn't really know exactly where things were going. And so during this leadership team, because basically to back up a little bit, Advait had shared that he wanted to be the CEO, but we had talked to advisors, and our advisors were like, hey, Advait, basically you're an empath, Aza's not an empath, like that there's the reason why, like, you're not going to like being the CEO. Like, he's pretty like conflict avoidant kind of. He likes doing his own thing a lot. He's kind of more of an introvert. And it was just like it. And so basically I talked to our chief people officer, this lady, and she I was like, Advite, we've talked to our advisors. I don't think it makes sense for Advite to be the CEO, but I'm open to talking about like someone else being the CEO. And so we're going to talk about that during the leadership team offsite. So we have this meeting, and we're sitting there on these couches, and it's me and our chief people officer, who's a lady named Lisa Cuevas, and Advite, and then this guy who looks like Tobias from Arrested Development. Feel free to Google it. He looks exactly like Tobias. And we made a list. So we're sitting on these couches, and we made like a Google sheet of all the things a CEO should be good at. Those are the rows. And then I'm the first column, and we start ranking me 1 through 10 on how I am at each of these things. You know, things like communication, vision, probably leadership, whatever, you know. Halfway through the list, I'm just like absolutely devastated. I'm like bordering, not hysterical, but yeah, kind of hysterical, crying for sure. And yeah, and we do Advite's list. Advite to this point had been the CTO. He also didn't really like managing people, so he had kind of been like a CTO that wasn't really managing people. So a lot of the list for him was like kind of theoretical. If you like, it was hard to grade him based on his past performance because he hadn't really been in like a managing people role, which is a big part of the CEO thing usually. So, but we scored him, and I honestly don't even know like who was really making the scores. I can't really remember. Maybe it was Lisa, or I don't know. I can't imagine myself like volunteering that many numbers at this point, because I was just like so distraught. Because basically I was realizing that I wasn't going to be the CEO anymore, that it didn't make sense for me to be the CEO anymore. And so we go through this list, and we had add Tyler to the list, or I asked to add Tyler because I thought Tyler would be a good CEO for GoGuardian. And then it basically gets to a point where the agreement that we made was that we were gonna, so what Google did, because Google had these really young founders, and then they found this guy named Eric Schmidt to basically be the like adult supervision to teach them to be better leaders, kind of. And so we decided to pull a Google. So I was gonna, in the plan, or so I thought, was that I was gonna step away for a while, and Advite was going to be the guy kind of in an interim way, and then I was going to come back, and we were going to find an Eric Schmidt, and then we were going to both like be better leaders and stuff. And it was super emotional, and I remember this like emotional moment where I said to Advite, I said, I don't know exactly what I said, do it, like do what's right for the kids, basically. Oh, still feel it. And then it was this crazy moment. I had built this company for 4 years, and it was my baby. It was like it was me. I like put everything into it. And then, yeah, I go down and I get into my white Prius, and I'm like, where do I even go? Like, what do I do? Like, I don't go to the office. Like, what I did is I drove up to Santa Cruz because I was dating a girl in Santa Cruz, Stacy. And yeah, I drove up and like kind of stayed in bed for 2 or 3 days. And then pretty shortly after, she told me she had a friend in Kauaʻi that she did Outward Bound with. And she was like, hey, she has a yurt, like we can go stay in Kauaʻi. That could be nice. And I'd never been to Kauaʻi. I didn't even really know what Kauaʻi was. And I came to Kauaʻi and felt this feeling of weight lifting from my shoulders every day, like a visceral, energetic feeling of weight. Like I felt like the island was healing me, honestly. And just like this stress and weight just leaving my body. And it was such a relief. And I called our investor, and I was like, hey, this crazy thing happened. Had a conversation with Advite and Lisa, and I'm not going to be the CEO anymore. And he's like, what? Like, you should have called me. Like, and I was like, well, I don't know. That was that thing. And yeah. And then, do you guys want me to keep going?
I feel like.
Well, they keep going is it kind of gets interesting because it leads to like why the company sold, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested in hearing how the progression was. But
yeah, okay, because basically, Advite, I don't know exactly how long it took. Okay, yeah. So Advite pretty quickly realized that he didn't actually like the role of CEO. And so he called me at one point and was like, hey, Aza, I want to go to an ashram in India and meditate, and we should sell the company. Like, I'm not enjoying this. He also struggled with depression at different times, and I think he was struggling with that again. He's like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. This is hard. And there's definitely a part of me that was kind of pissed. Like, you kind of just stole my baby from me, and now you want to sell it into private equity slavery so you can go meditate in a cave? Like, fuck. And yeah. And I was like kind of entertained the idea of taking the company back over and like coming in. I would have to fire a ton of people, probably. It would be super brutal. And I was, talking to the investor and about what that would look like. And, but eventually I just kind of sort of surrendered to it. I was like, he wants to sell it. Like, all right, and honestly, to this day, I'm still not sure how I feel about that decision. Like, that might be the one thing that I would like go back and change, because everyone said like, oh, not all private equity firms are created equal, and like it's not just selling your friends into slavery, and there's growth-oriented private equity firms, not just people that are like going to be cost cutting and firing all your friends. But time has told a different story. And yeah. Okay. So we hired a banker. We pitched 25 times or something. So this is totally different than the other one. Got 23 offers or something. It might be like 20 and then 18 offers, but it's something like that. That was crazy. And then yeah, so we got all these offers. The companies that want to buy GoGuardian are all like bidding up the price. Basically, it started at 80 million, and I was like, whatever, 90, and then 100, and then 120, and then 125, and I think we got up to like 135 million or something, and it was going to be Google and Sumeru were like the highest bidders, and they wanted to take the deal together. Sumeru is a private equity firm. Google is Google. And basically long story short, okay, yeah. So advice. So I was there for the meetings, but I like pitching, and I was kind of like playing the role of the crazy founder, and I would like kind of tell the story of founding GoGuardian, and then I would be like, all right, I'm gonna like go surf, but you guys have fun, because yeah. And basically, what Advite realized throughout the process is that he was going to have to take a massive valuation cut if he told them that he didn't want to be involved. So they'd be asking questions like, hey, do you really believe in the future of the company? He'd be like, yeah, of course. And they'd be like, cool, so you like want to stay involved? And he'd be like, yeah, yeah. And they'd be like, all right, so you don't really want to sell that much of your equity, right? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, and through, you know, you imagine doing however many pitches, 20 something pitches, you start kind of believing more in the future too, especially if you know you're talking to Google and they're like, oh yeah, this could be really cool, blah blah blah, we can help with blah blah blah. And so that basically ended up happening. He started believing in it more, and yeah, kind of got put into a position of like not selling his equity. Like he was and it was kind of bizarre because the optics of the thing would have been, because basically I sold like 80% of my stock, and so it would have kind of looked like I was the one pushing the sale and like trying to get the company to sell, because Advite didn't, but you know, but
He was
it's
the one who
just
really wanted.
He was the one who
yeah.
proposed the idea in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was, so in the effort of complete disclosure, right when he took over things, I was talking, so there's this guy named Lloyd, and Lloyd was the CTO of Looker, which is this company, and I just had a lot of respect, still have a lot of respect for Lloyd. And I told him what happened. He was honestly super pissed at Advite. And he was like, yeah, he just kind of felt like Advite kind of stabbed me in the back. And I've never been honestly sure myself of like how much was that, or how I still honestly would love to talk to Advite and like figure this out. But yeah, what Lloyd said to me was, Aza, if you're not the CEO, you need to go in and you should sell the company. Like if you need to bet on yourself. So at the next board meeting, so I'm rewinding right now. At the next board meeting, I came in and I was like, hey guys, it was, you know, the guy from Anthos and it was Advite. And I was like, guys, I've realized like we need to sell the company. Like I'm not, you know, and they were like, no, let's not sell the company. And I was like, okay, all right, that's fine. Like, so I don't want to pretend like there was, like I had never suggested selling the company. I don't know. It was confusing, and eventually I realized that I was going to make a bunch of money selling the company, and that was also like pretty confusing. Yeah, because part of me was honestly really scared of making money because I wasn't sure like. Yeah, I don't know. I went to this like chat at UCLA one time where there's this like guy who was like, you know, someone's successful, and he basically, his story was like, I made a bunch of money, and then I started like going to clubs a lot and doing a bunch of cocaine, and I like lost all my money and got really depressed. And so I was kind of like, fuck that, like I don't want to do that. Yeah.
In terms of like satisfaction at that time when you're gonna sell your shares, what did you think was more valuable, like the money you gained from it, or like, I don't know, like keeping it and like seeing it grow, or like what was your perspective on like the money aspect? Do you think the money like even would satisfy you at that time?
I think there's definitely a part of me pretty similar to the part that like was excited when Todd was going to give us $100,000. That like when I started looking at the numbers, I was like, oh my god, like this is going to be crazy. So I was kind of like giddy in a certain way. And yeah, but I never was like, you, I mean, you guys can kind of like hear the story. Like I was never that motivated by the money. For me, it was just like this fun thing that I was doing with a bunch of my friends, and we're just like on this mission together. And that was like the priceless part of it, that it was actually awesome. Yeah, and I don't know, the money part was confusing. I remember I was like in somewhere in Europe, staying at hostels with my brother, and right when it was selling, and I talked to Advite on the phone. I called him, and at this point, there's definitely part of me that like didn't want to fuck up the whole deal, because I kind of realized how much money I was about to make, but also I realized that it was totally, like I asked him, I was like, Advite, why are we selling the company? Like, what? Like, I knew why we started selling the company, and also you could go to an ashram in India and meditate, but like, that's not going to happen. You're not selling your equity really now. Like, why are we selling the company? And he was like, honestly, at this point, we're this far down the road. Like, everyone thinks we're selling it. I think we should just sell it. And yeah, a stronger me, or like a me now, would probably stand up for that. Like, I still feel bad for like essentially, like, I kind of feel like a parent to GoGuardian, that like abandoned the child. And it doesn't matter if you know, the mom, you know, let's say it's like a real child and you're the dad, and the mom's like, you're a terrible dad, like you should go like die and never talk to our child again. Like, that's not really a good reason necessarily to like actually never talk to your child again. And like, I feel like you still need to be like, okay, like, let's work through this. Like, and I feel like, yeah, I didn't really do that, and I still feel weird about it. And like, my lack of involvement in this baby's life to this point is bizarre for me, and it feels really weird. And it, truthfully, like, I don't actually think it's probably, I don't think it's what's best for the child. I think I'm like pretty built into the child's DNA to a certain extent. I think it would probably be a healthy child if like it had some relationship with the founder. But yeah, I don't really have the power to force that. And it's, yeah.
I can kind of see the emotions you feel after it all happened and like your lack of involvement, but how were your emotions in your head while it was all happening, and then you like realized that you could have been more involved? Or
What do you mean? Like, when?
like, okay, so when you were like selling the company, um and at that point, did you realize that you could have been involved in like the last like 6 8 months?
And to like add on, did you feel like once you found out that you weren't gonna be CEO anymore, that you detached yourself from like the relationship between parent and child within you and the company?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I kind of had no choice in a certain way to, yeah, detach myself. And there was a time when I came back to the company, and I was like helping with something, and it was just kind of awkward, I think, because people didn't know if they should listen to me or listen to Advite. And but yeah, I definitely felt like emotionally, yeah, closing off for sure.
That was like deep.
That was very
That was
deep.
very
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
I would have never imagined that like that much success could bring that much problems. Like, you have a company making millions of dollars a year, and there's so much problems inside of it that, I mean, like, obviously a lot of people outside won't even imagine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like me sitting down in like high school with like GoGuardian on my computer, I could never imagine that all of this is going on behind the scenes.
Right?
Right?
I was just like, oh, there's some guy trying to make me not play video games
Yeah.
in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, that's kind of what I'm left with, is like the impact of what I created and what we created. And truthfully, yeah, I don't know. I think there's just as many arguments for it being positive for society as there are for it being bad for society. There's like a suicide prevention component, and that there's some crazy stories there that are like a kind of a bit of the saving grace of like, okay, maybe this is something good. And then there's like, okay, we kind of enabled some weird dystopian like spying on kids thing. And sure, if it's like a 8-year-old with a device, then it's maybe kind of okay and like feels okay. But as they get older, and then they just kind of have this expectation that people are watching them, um that's kind of weird.
How was this moral dilemma in the process of scaling the company? Would you have like often conversations with like the leadership team or your co-founder?
Yeah. Well, what it kind of did is we always had this thing of like, are we a security company or are we an education company? And we knew that being an education company just felt better. And so we kind of would all lie to each other and ourselves and be like, we're an education company. We want to, but the truth is, like, I care about like people's potential and education forming, but I think education as we currently see it is totally fucked. And like, really, I do not care about like advancing, quote unquote, the education system in the current context that we all see it. I don't think it's really a wise thing. And so I didn't. Yeah, we were always like, oh, we're an education company and we care about, and that kind of is what happened actually. Because the COVID was like really good for GoGuardian. There's a ton of people that used it. And then because Advite like wanted it to be an education company, he ended up buying a whole bunch of other education companies to kind of like give GoGuardian a bit of like more ability to have all the context that it would need to basically be like, this browsing data leads to better outcomes, which was kind of always our like pretty thin reasoning for how it could maybe eventually be an education company, because we had like a lot of student browsing data, and if we could correlate that with outcomes in some way, then maybe we could like help education happen faster. But it ended up, what I've heard, what ended up happening is it kind of just made this, it was really hard to integrate those other companies. And so then it just turned into this weird like holding company kind of all these other companies. I don't know if you guys know what Blackboard is, but it's kind of a similar thing where it's just this big company that's kind of like disjointed and doesn't really, yeah, it's not like this lean machine that we were, and it's just kind of has like this confused identity. And so yeah, we were always kind of confused in that way. And truthfully, taking a step outside, I feel like I'm just able to be way more honest with myself about like what I actually care about and what is real. And I honestly sort of despise all the like education rhetoric at GoGuardian, and like I'll see these things posted by whoever, and it's just, I know that it's just so thin and like not really real, and it's just a continuation of the thing that I feel like kind of screwed me up, of like needing to think that I had to pretend to be someone. Yeah.
Do you think that like the confusion of the morals, like whether it was a security company or education company, played a part in how you were as a leader, or how did that impact you
Totally.
while?
Yeah. Because if I was more honest with myself and everyone else around like, yeah, we're kind of a security company in the education space, it would have just made it way easier to just like be like, okay, this is actually how it makes sense to grow and expand. But we knew that it was like less, it didn't feel as like emotionally good in a certain way, because security is more based on fear, and education is more based on like human potential. And yeah, so it definitely led, yeah, played a part in that for sure.
I think, yeah, I think there's like a lot of things to like take away from the mistakes you made, or like the choices you made in certain scenarios and how you would have made like different choices thinking back on with how honest you want to be with yourself and with your coworkers? Do you think you've genuinely taken these learnings and applied them to, I guess, now CoDream and your future ventures?
I don't think I'm enlightened, really. I think it's still like such a process. And it's still, I just have to continually like, yeah, force, like humble myself and let myself be humbled in front of people and admit that I don't really know what's happening. And, yeah, I don't know. I hope that I've learned and grown, but part of me is definitely afraid that I'm just like exactly the same kind of. And I think there are a lot of the same things that I feel like I was working on then. I'm truthfully still grappling with. I think there's a lot of things are just like part of what makes me me, and part of what makes me maybe good at starting something, but not as good at like the stability that's maybe more useful in like the gradual continuation of something.
What do you think has like led to like an improvement of your clarity based on like GoGuardian? Like, I mean, obviously, like moving to Kauaʻi contributes to it, and like just being able to be in your own like thoughts and kind of grow yourself. But
Yeah,
what do you think are like the aspects to like getting this clarity?
I think being comfortable being alone is probably one of the big ones. Spending time in nature. Basically, my overarching theory here is that like we all have these monkey minds that are pretty wild, and they can. There's not a lot of peace or like real clarity that comes from there. For me, the peace has come from moments, getting out of that and like letting that subside or continue in whatever way it does, but you're just kind of less like attached to it and less caught up in it. And then I feel there can be these, yeah, you can feel your body more, and like there's more kind of peace and stability in the body. Um, or yeah, it's hard to talk about in a certain way because you have to talk about it with the monkey mind. Um, but I think there's definitely something there that has felt really wonderful to have a chance to spend time with and tap into, and kind of creates the confusion in me around like the right balance between the hustle culture of like what can we create as quickly as possible, and like, okay, no, how can we also stay in touch with something that can keep us grounded and creating things that we're really proud of and creating relationships that we're really proud of too.
Do you think like obviously you said like the difference between like the hustle culture and like kind of the slowed down, creating something that you're proud of, making sure to develop the relationships along the way. If you were to start another company, how would your approach be? Or I guess like what would your like ideal values be if you were to
Yeah,
start a new company?
it would be a lot slower for sure. um it wouldn't have a massive influence in like trying to make a lot of money for other people. Like basically I wouldn't take on a bunch of investors probably. um yeah, it would be integrated in my life in a way that feels healthy. Like I think work and life, I don't really believe so much, and I don't know, it's a silly thing to say in a certain way, but there's a lot of people like working until they're like get retirement age, which is whatever age it is. What age is retirement age?
60s.
Like
60
yeah,
or 70 or
60.
something. And then so they can then like relax and enjoy life. And that just doesn't make sense to me, largely because you don't know when you're going to die. So yeah, just definitely slower, like kind of integrating all the aspects a little more, a lot more balance too. Um, yeah, not just like hustling and hustling and hustling. And yeah, I think having a balance between like thinking about what impact, because I wasn't even really aware what I was building, honestly. I didn't really know what GoGuard. I didn't really understand the need, which is why I basically just turned into like a dev shop for a school district or like two school districts. And I ended up building something that all the other school districts wanted. And, but I definitely want to put more energy into like, okay, if this does work out, like, are we really happy with what we created here? Is this something that we're going to be like psyched to tell our grandkids? Like, yeah, I did this thing and like, this is what I brought into the world. And like, you go do your part now. This is what I did. Because yeah, with GoGuardian, I think there's definitely parts where I'm like, yeah, I feel like it was definitely a need, and I feel like I learned how to start a business, but I don't know that I learned how to start something that I feel really, really proud of.
Do you feel proud of your journey, of like what you've learned and what you've taken away from it?
I know the right answer. Yeah, I let's see. Do I feel I feel a weird relationship with pride. But I'm definitely happy that there were some hard learnings there. It reminds me, my friend Matt Mashari that I was just talking to, he just went to Burning Man, and he was like, yeah, there were some scars from Burning Man, but they're like good scars in a certain way. And actually, wait, I have to tell you one last little story, which is that I went, okay, I was in Newport Beach, which happens to be where that last leadership team meeting happened. And I didn't really remember that I was in Newport Beach, but I was just randomly there for a meeting with like this wealth manager or something. And I texted Advite and I asked him if he could find the address of the house that we like had that meeting at with the couch, and he like found it in his email and texted me, and I had like maybe like an hour before that other meeting I needed to get to, and I was on the wrong side of this basically this water channel, but I had a surfboard. And I was like, all right, am I going to do this? Like, this is going to be a crazy thing, but I'm going to do this. And I took the surfboard. I like took off all my clothes except for board shorts. Granted, California water, it's cold. Paddle across the bay, climb up onto the rocks, start sprinting, like, cause it's like a mile away from where I climb up. I start just like running as fast as I can to this house where this meeting happened like a long time ago. I don't think I have my phone, so I'm just like looking at the street addresses. And I'm like, of course I'm thinking like, well, okay, what are the chances that someone's gonna be here like when I show up or like whatever. Run, get there. Exactly as I'm getting there, I shit you not, the door opens. And I'm just like, what? And I explained to these people who it turns out are just renting it like on Airbnb. And I'm like, hey, this is a crazy thing, but like I had a meeting in this house years ago, and it was one of the hardest moments of my life. And like, I just want to come here and just kind of work through it. And I was kind of expecting them. I think, yeah, I was kind of expecting them to be like, what? You're like a crazy person. I was like out of breath, you know, I just been running, you know, shirtless. And I kind of expected them to be like, yeah, bro, like, like get out of, but they were like, yeah, come in. And so I went in and like went to the balcony. They had actually kind of remodeled a little bit, and sat there and just like went into the emotional experience and really felt it. And and yeah, got what I felt like were the lessons from it. And the lesson that I remember kind of coming to me, I don't know if you guys have these spiritual moments ever, but it was one of those spiritual moments for me. And it was around trusting my own experience, trusting myself. And so I feel like that was really like what GoGuardian kind of boils down to for me, is like I lost that self-belief. I lost trust in myself. And it was a huge lesson in what happens when you do that. And like Nick, that guy who I fucking love, like I care so much about Nick, honestly. It's been so sad over these past 10 years to watch like the joy get sucked out of his work by private equity, and you know, just as this thing has kind of like just crushed this baby that I poured all this love into. And all these friends that I, you know, have all these fond memories of, just like now working for this thing that doesn't care about them at all. And, you know, Weston getting fired, all these people, tons of people getting fired. And it's a gnarly lesson in what happens when you like stop believing in yourself. And yeah, so hopefully I get that lesson. And hopefully other people can learn from it too.
Very interesting, because I feel like a very big part of entrepreneurship is to have that self-trust in you. Like if you're like when you were starting the company, for example, you had no money, you had no job, and you had to believe in yourself that you're going to make something out of it to even be able to start it. And the fact that that's what like basically led to the downfall, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It's a lot of lessons to be learned for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like sometimes it's harder to believe in yourself. Like the more successful you get, I feel like when you're like just starting off, you have this crazy ambition, and then once you start to like rack up successes, you may feel like at some point that you're like at the top of a mountain, and it can only go downhill from there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I ever really believed. I don't know even what believing in yourself even is in a certain way. Because there was part of me that always, like, I never quite thought it was going to work, kind of. I was like, what? Like, and I was scared to want it to work, kind of. And I was, scared of failure for sure. But there's just a huge degree of like just keep trying and just kind of fake it till you make it and see what you can make happen. Just even though I didn't really necessarily think it was gonna work, I was just gonna just really try. Yeah, but I do think maybe it's more about like trusting your reality in a certain way, and I think there's a certain part of that where I started to like believe in what other people thought a leader needed to be, what other people thought, and you know, I needed to be more than my own reality. And I do think there's something there that's just like pretty human and pretty universal, like you, and probably how like society kind of strips people of their own power is getting them to not really trust their reality. Yeah.
Do you think there's like a level of distortion to that reality that grew as like stuff with the company grew?
Yeah, can you say more about that?
I mean, I just kind of mean like you not being able to realize the full extent to the stuff that's happening around you and the scale of reality to those events, and how that really just correlates to just everything else about your life. I don't know if I explained that clearly.
I don't honestly understand the question. Yeah, I don't.
Let me try to say it again. So when as the company was growing, did you ever feel that like it was just all a dream or it wasn't real?
Mm.
Like,
Hmm. There's definitely points of it that were like, whoa, because I had always heard that it was like supposed to be really hard. And there's definitely times when it all felt really easy, kind of. I know that might be a strange thing to say after all of this, like talking about a lot of the negative, but it also, there's a certain part of it that just like felt like it was just kind of all falling into place. And yes, we were trying hard, and yes, we were in the right place, but it was also, yeah, kind of strangely easeful. And I guess there's a part of that that almost felt a little bit surreal too. And I think that to me, that's kind of the interesting, almost magical part of entrepreneurship is like, how do you find those like kind of magical pockets where you can kind of ride these interesting energetic waves of the universe in a graceful way. And that's something that's just, yeah, it's hard to talk about, hard to understand. And it's really hard because I think of it a little bit like dancing. And sure, you can like kind of learn to dance by emulating other people's dance moves, but as the hippies at ecstatic dance will tell you, like dancing is a really personal thing. It's about like what feels good in your body, and it's not about like how someone else expresses themselves. And so, yeah, I think entrepreneurship is interesting in a similar way, where you have to figure out, yeah, how you want to lead, and how you want to create, and what you want to create, and what all is an authentic expression of you. And that to me is just what life's about. Like that's with art, with whatever your expressions are. Like, yeah, what does that look like? And yeah. I guess I kind of want to say thanks to the all the people that like did believe in me, and all the people that did spend so much time with me. And on that crazy journey that was GoGuardian. Yeah. And I guess I also want to say sorry for not being more strong in a certain way, and not standing up for some of these notions of what I felt was right, but then kind of let that be corroded for various reasons. Yeah, I truly do hope to use these experiences to learn and grow as a leader, and as a human, and as an innovator, and as an entrepreneur, and as a being.
Yeah, I want to thank you for sharing these stories with us, Aza. I feel like there's a lot to learn about entrepreneurship, as well as being truthful to yourself from these stories.
I think the stories that you talked about today are very hard to share, especially for someone that's gone through so much. And we really just wanted to appreciate you for kind of telling us about these stories, having us learn and everybody else learn from your experiences, and just giving us the opportunity to do so.
Thanks, guys. I know this was your first podcast. You did an awesome job. Yeah, thanks for the questions. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for being so open and making this a great conversation.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Mahalo for joining, everyone. Yeah. Have a beautiful day. Show.